So, Professor, thank you for being on the program.
It's a pleasure for me.
All right. Well, I understand you have a new book that's coming out, or has it come out yet?
It will be in these days, mid of December, I hope.
What's it about?
It is about the trials in Istanbul between 1919 and 1922 after Armenian Genocide. The post-war government set up a military tribunal in Istanbul, and they tried the perpetrator of Armenian Genocide. There were approximately 200 defendants and 62 different trials. This is an important event in the history of Armenian Genocide and in the history of international law, and especially the indictments and the verdicts and some documents that came out throughout the investigations are very important for genocide research. So this first time the English reader will be available to read all these documents.
Cool. So you write all of your, you don't write your books in English though?
I don't write in English, no.
How do you get that translated? How does that process work?
It's a very complicated process, because translation is not only a simple translation, because it's an issue of the logic also. When I write something, I write in Turkish and publish in Turkey first, and then I reformulate everything according to an English mentality or logic and send to my translator, and it comes back and I work on it and send it back and so on. It's a really painful process. And then the editors from the publishing houses working also on the manuscript. It takes 2 or 3 years.
Sure. I understand you've written a number of books though, haven't you?
Yes, it is more than 10 books.
I think I read the number was like 12. This is going to be your 12th book, I think, so.
It depends how you count. Because sometimes when I publish something in Turkish, and the English version of that book is not the simple translation, I add a couple of chapters on it. So whether or not it should be counted a new book or only a translation is an issue of interpretation. But it is true, it's approximately 12-13 books.
Have they all been on the same subject?
Approximately, I say approximately, overarching concept I would call maybe violence. There are some books of mine, basically in Turkish, I publish in Turkish language. A couple of articles in German also from that book, basically on the history of torture and violence in the Ottoman Empire.
You have such an interesting accent. So this comes from you being born in Turkey and then moving to Germany and then America.
Could be. I have no idea about my accent. Is it German or is it Turkish or none of them?
This is a question. It's so great though.
Oh, thank you.
we really enjoy your accent. It's
great.
Fun. It's kind of phenomenal too that you know so many languages. You know, like I speak one language, you know.
It's so bad. This is disadvantages of being a citizen of an empire. This was the case in Ottoman Empire also in 19th century. They didn't learn any other foreign language. They thought this is something disgusting.
Right.
So
you were a rebel.
Not at all. I mean, I wish I could speak more than a couple of languages. I mean, I can speak only German and English.
Well, that's okay. When did you first become interested in Armenian genocide?
It was such a coincidence, actually. I was working in Hamburg in an institute, in a research institute. My first topic was the history of violence in Ottoman Empire. And when one works on the history of torture, one automatically encounters the history of massacres and mass violences in Ottoman Empire, especially against the Armenians, end of 19th century. This is how I got interested on the topic, and I thought, oh, it's interesting, I should look into it very closely. I had no idea how complicated this topic was. My interest was totally academic, and I was so naive. And this is how I got interested. And there is another important aspect I have to add also. You know, my first project was a limited one, only for 3 years. And I didn't know what to do after that. And in our institute, there was a mega project. And a part of this mega project was the Nuremberg trials. And the question was whether or not Nuremberg trials, as such, was an aberration in human history, or it could be a norm in the future. So this means the trying of the government members from the crimes that they committed in name of their governments and states. And Nuremberg was the first example, and nobody knew that whether it could be a standard like an international criminal court, which we have today. In 1990s, nobody knew about that because Yugoslavian war hadn't broken out yet, and so on. This was an idea of institute, and I knew that there was a connection between Nuremberg and the trials in Istanbul. My old project was over. So I approached the institute directors and said that, yeah, it's very interesting to look at the connections. They said, okay, good, let's do that. So I started.
Recently we had that conference on genocide in Congo. What was your role in that?
I was one of the organizers of this conference, but basic idea actually came from a Clark alumni. And she was graduated from Clark, and she is very active in an NGO in Congo. And her idea was actually originally to bring the activists from Congo and from the North America engage in Congo. And then our center developed the idea more, and then we brought really academia and states, the politique, and the NGOs together and turned into a huge conference. And I organized other conferences also. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, I organized a conference on the reparation and restitution, the question. It is a very, really urgent problem, especially in Armenian genocide. There are several court cases going on against Turkish state, Turkish central bank, and against German companies for the reparation. And we organized a comparative conference where we compared the question of reparation and restitution in Holocaust, Native Americans, and Armenian genocide case.
Right. Continuing on in that vein, we understand that you recently had a court victory against Article 301 of the Turkish Penal Code.
Yeah, this is another part of my life, it is true. As a genocide scholar, you cannot avoid being an activist because the field that you are dealing with, the human rights and human rights abuses, is a systematic practice of the states. And this is what is going on in Turkey. Armenian genocide is still a taboo. To write on Armenian genocide is not easy. We have a penal code, and there is an article 301 in this penal code, and the article is about insulting Turkishness. So according to this law, if you write on Armenian genocide and call 1915 as a genocide, it can be interpreted by the court or by judges as insulting Turkishness. And I consider this as a violation of the freedom of speech, because as a scholar I have to have the opinion, freedom to write whatever I think on 1915, and I brought the case to European Human Rights Court, and court decided in my favor. This is though a big victory for Turkey, because European Human Rights Court's decisions have a binding character. Turkey must obey this decision and change the Turkish Penal Code. So this would be a great step towards the freedom of speech in Turkey.
Now, this might not have sat well with many people. Are you allowed into Turkey these days?
Yes, I can travel without any problem. There is no legal restrictions. Turkey is in a transitional period. It is a society in transition from an authoritarian regime to more democratic regime, and facing history, talking on history is now very current in Turkey. So there are always pro and contras. So from government perspective, I'm not scared because of this democratization process. I can go anytime, but there are still extreme nationalists attacking individuals, scholars, intellectuals, so I have to be very careful.
Now, there was that incident in Canada where you were detained because of your Wikipedia page, right?
How do you know that all this stuff?
It was on Wikipedia.
It is true. This is a huge scandal. It is a part of a campaign against me, organized late years by Turkish nationalists and Turkish lobbyist group here in the United States, because of my publications and because of my position on Armenian genocide. They not only vandalized the Wikipedia page, they organized a hate campaign through the internet. They regularly write letters to the university presidents and to different universities where I go and lecture. Even they attacked me physically in 2006 in New York. So within all this campaign, one aspect was the vandalizing the Wikipedia page, where they put the sentence that I'm a terrorist and I killed Americans in Turkey. It is true. I mean, this is always a funny story by all these campaigns. There is always a truth in all these hate campaigns. Americans were killed in Turkey, 1969. I was 13 years old and a high school student. So it is very easy to combine this event with my life story. So, and when I was traveling to Canada, I think after vandalizing this Wikipedia page, they informed also the Canadian police that a terrorist is coming. So based on this Wikipedia website page, they detained me on the border approximately 4 hours, but the university intervened, and also the Canadian minister. This is, I mean, the good part of democracy in North America indeed. 2 ministers from Canadian cabinet personally intervened, and then they allowed me enter the country, and they apologized for their behavior, and then Wikipedia officially also apologized, and they blocked now my pages. It is now not easy to change now.
Well, Professor, this has been very informative, and we're going to put this all over TV and all over the internet, and people are going to know what a great guy you are.
Thank you very much. It's a really great pleasure to have this interview, and I hope those who watch and listen this interview get inspired and be active in the genocide and prevention genocide and human rights issues.
All right. That's what we're all about here at Clark, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, thanks.
So this is the book published in Turkey by a university press, 2008, and it is on the deportation and massacres of the Armenians and the protocols of the military tribunal in Istanbul between 1919 and 1922. And we have a shorter version of this book. Now it's coming out in English language. The title of the book is Judgment at Istanbul, Armenian Genocide and Military Tribunals, and will be available for the English reader.